going to call this meeting to order. We are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, on to minutes. We need the approval of the minutes from the regular board meeting on September 9th.
Can we approve them all at once?
Yeah, September 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd.
I move to approve the September 9th, 16th, and 23rd minutes.
I'll second it.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Moving on to approval of general fund vouchers 81660 through 81783 and wire transfers 2025-0028 through 2025-0088.
I move to approve fund vouchers and wire transfers as read.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. On to public comments, and I know we've got public comments out there. Miles, are you ready?
Are you ready?
All right, bud, go for it.
Take a breath and speak loud.
Dear school board members, I'm Miles Morrissey in 6th grade, and I think we should have more recess time during the day. Why? Because sitting still for so long is really hard, and we have a lot of energy to burn off. When we get more time to run around, we feel better and can focus more in class. Studies have even shown that kids who get more recess are more focused and do better with schoolwork after they've had a break. Recess helps us stay healthy too. Running, playing games, and just moving around makes our bodies strong and keeps us from feeling stressed. Research shows that kids who get 60 minutes of physical activity each day are healthier and less likely to have health problems later. Plus, moving around helps our brains work better, so we can think more clearly. Also, playing with friends helps us learn how to work together and solve problems. These are things we can't always learn in class. We need time to figure out things on our own, and recess is the best time to do that. So, more recess time isn't just fun, it's good for us. Please give us more time to play. We'll be healthier, happier, and ready to learn when we get back to class. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles.
Thank you, Miles.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good job.
Do we have any questions?
How much recess time do you get now, Miles?
Like 45 minutes, like 30 minutes first recess, and then like 15 minutes second recess.
So there's only 2 recesses?
Yeah.
Is one of them in the morning before lunch and one's after lunch?
Yeah, we have like one before lunch, and then we have class period, and then we go to second recess.
What would you like for recess?
Like 10 minutes, maybe longer for the second recess.
Okay.
Has it changed since you've been to Clear Lake? Did it used to be more?
No, I don't think so.
Do you get it taken away if kids are naughty?
No.
Okay.
Thank
You raised some good information in the thing you read, Miles. Good job.
Presented that very well, thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Good job, buddy.
All right. Thank you, Miles, for public comments.
Thank
Can you
Moving-
explain that we can't respond?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing that we can
We just
tell
listen.
you at this point, but we will take that into consideration and we can have conversations about it, okay? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott Miles.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job, Miles.
All right, looks like we have no resignations.
Yep, approval resignations, there are none.
That is a good thing.
Yep.
And approval of hires, looks like we've got one long-term sub?
Yep, just one, just a long-term substitute math teacher at the high school, junior, senior high school, I should say, subbing for a maternity leave or for a long-term leave, and be here roughly up through Christmas break probably. So that is Mr. Darcy Lorson, who is a retired math teacher from Amory Middle School. So.
Who's my math teacher? When he was brand new.
Mm-hmm. So that's our only one.
All right, so I just need an approval of our long-term sub.
I move to approve Darcy Larson as our math long-term sub.
Second?
Second.
Okay, properly moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, seeing none, motion passes. Greg, are you ready or can I keep going?
Go ahead, keep going.
All right, and then next up, approval of the winter coaching roster.
Okay, so you can see it's attached there. I'd made a note that we have a couple of assistant positions that are still to be determined, that were being worked on and are being worked on as we speak. And we did have one update. So if you open the document, you can see the basketball coach is Mr. Sargent, head coach for the boys. Josh Trepanier is the assistant. Tyson Blanchard back to be the C team coach if that's needed for numbers. That we always determine that based if there is numbers that allow a C team to happen. Junior high is also the same coach as Larry Ramus and Bailey Blanchard. Basketball coach, we know that's Melissa Lewis is the head coach, still looking for an assistant there. And then junior high coaches, Christy Arcand, and then the late addition to the list that wasn't on there Friday when I sent this out was Mallory Bienendahl. She was recently interviewed and accepted the junior high second girls basketball position. Wrestling coaches are the same as last year again. Jason Wood is the head coach, Matt Anderson assistant, junior high, Jacob Meyer and Ed Mago sharing that. And then dance and cheer, no changes from what we've talked about before. Jennifer Mickelson, still the head, and Jamie Van Hooklam assisting. So.
All right. Can I get a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve winter coaching roster.
All right, second. All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. You ready?
Yep. Thank you, Christy. The next item of business is consideration/approval of the district bookkeeper consultant for 2024.
And then I'd recommend that the board might want to table this till we have closed session to talk about the particulars of the contract.
Okay. Then we'll move on to our next item of business, the approval of Start College Now and Early College Credit Program application.
Okay, so, and Mr. Melberg, chime in if you've got anything to add, but certainly we don't talk about any of the individual applications, but again, these are for students for the second semester of this current year, 2024-25. That process starts already here in October for the next semester, beginning in January. They're broken into two documents just the way that they scanned. But and just a reminder about the program is that if a class that they've applied for is one that we offer an equivalent class here, that's not one that we would pay for. It's only if they have a class that they're doing there, if they've exhausted here and then it's a class that's above and beyond that we don't offer. A student could still take a class there that we offer here, but then they would just pay the tuition for it themselves. So.
Do we typically pay one class per applicant? Is that what we're thinking, or do we sometimes pay more?
We sometimes pay more.
Okay, it's just a report. Okay.
And not all of these classes will actually get taken. So the kids apply to get these classes approved, and then actually the nuts and bolts of, is this one that we actually offer? That's, Mr. Melberg and Mrs. Kaler go through that and, talk to the kids or the families about, hey, we can approve these, but this one we offer an equivalent class. So they go through those details. And so yeah, you'll see a student.
I was kind of curious about the principles of finance.
Yeah. Like they might have 5 classes listed there. They might end up only actually taking one or maybe 2 of them, but they just apply for more because just to see what their possibilities are, or what fits in their schedule.
And they may have already taken some of our business classes, our finance classes, and this is an opportunity for them to get some college credit and high school credit at the same time.
The other nice thing is you're taking college classes with the senior high support system, so it makes for an easier transition when you go to the next level.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Start College Now and Early College Credit Program applications. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the applications. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next item of business is our strategic plan scoreboard review. Portions of Pillar 1 students and Pillar 2 staff.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to do Pillar 1. If you recall, last meeting we did kind of close the books on 23-24 data, kind of had our year-end data from forward testing and ACT testing that comes in here. Forward testing comes in the fall. And then now this one, we've had a chance during September, the students in both buildings did their screen-year tests. So Fast Bridge at the elementary and middle school, and the CERT test for the 9th through 11th graders. And so that gave a chance to kind of get now some of that fall baseline data. And then the team met for a good long session last week and just worked on entering data and setting goals and teaming on that. So a lot of great conversations that it drives. So again, we're following the calendar that we laid out of checking in at different points throughout the school year on different items. So tonight we wanted to look at mainly, almost all the time we'll spend on Pillar 1, the student goals for academics and support. And then the Pillar 2 is just a small part I'm going to show you, and that's actually wrapping up something from 23-24. So I can put it up on the screen here, or do you guys want it on the screen, or are you comfortable looking at it on your own device?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, on your own device. Okay. And do you prefer to start, or do you want to look at the district one first, or do you want to go work your way up? It doesn't matter to you guys?
Can we do them in order? District to elementary to high school to special ed?
You bet. Just put them in the order that they're on the document right there. So, so if you pull up the district documents, I should say district level scorecard, Pillar 1, students are priority. So if you remember, it breaks down into the different sections of foster high levels of learning for all, and then below that is promoting growth. So that's where we're trying to move, students who are not achieving as highly as we want to get them to move up. And then below that, supporting well-being, recognizing strength, and creating engagement, and then encouraging future goals. So I'll talk through the district part. And keep in mind, dive deep in some of the data with the other schools here too as well. So for foster high levels of learning for all, for the district level scorecards, so we have 3rd grade reading, or ELA, and 8th grade math. And those are kind of recognized as 2 good areas to sort of, we call it kind of, take the temperature, or take a little blood pressure reading, or the dipstick in the oil change and see where, is our oil change, or our oil looking okay? And those are often used as predictors of graduation rate and so on. So some of our starting out screening data, you'll see, it varies across the board based on the different grades and different screeners, but some of it is higher than we've started out in the fall with some of them in the past. So anyway, the 3rd grade reading, 62% of kids were at benchmark on the, I'm talking about the forward exam here, not the screening test here. So because it's the district one, we're just looking at the year-to-year forward exam, the bigger picture. I apologize. I've got myself thinking about the school scorecards that we were working so hard on lately. So this is last year, our 3rd grade reading or ELA achievement on the forward exam is 62% of kids were at benchmark or higher. To put that into context, when we look at our forward exam scores in another month or 2 when they become public, we're going to see that that's a pretty significant increase. So that was pretty exciting to see a couple weeks ago when that stuff came out. And then our 8th grade math, 65% of students in the forward exam were at benchmark or above. So then what we do is, if we go back to the agenda, if you go back to the agenda item in board docs, the final document on there is that goal setting guidance document. You guys open that one. Remember, we use this as our guideline for how to help us, give us guidance with setting our goals. Setting goals is more of an art than a science. So, but we look at, the size of the number of students we're looking at, because if it's a small group of kids, let's say it's 15 or 25 students, you can have a bigger impact in a shorter period of time and move the needle on 25 kids. If you have a whole district of 500 kids, that data is going to move slower, and you should set correspondingly smaller goals to move it up. So that's one concept, is the bigger the group of students, or the bigger the group of people in question, you have a smaller percent increase. And then the other thing you look at is, do you want a nominal growth moderate growth or aggressive growth. So if you're already, if you're in a place where your achievement is fairly decent, you do a nominal growth. Hey, you're already pretty high. It's not realistic that you're going to double your growth or anything. But if you have a score or a data point that's in need of improvement, you want to set a more aggressive growth. So when we look at the numbers that we've set for percentage growth, I just want everyone to be reminded that we're not just pulling the numbers out of thin air. We're trying to use some real consistency and some reasoning behind it. So anyway,
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Is there a way, since this goal-setting guidance document is color-coded, is there a way to color-code those goals in the scorecard in the future?
Well, what we'll do is when we do the progress monitoring on the right, or when we do the, we'll see how we're doing. We will code them there. We do the red, yellow, or green.
Okay.
So if the goal is met, we'll say green. If the goal is not met, red, and if it's close, yellow. So
Sure.
We'll do that on the right-hand column. Yep. So we set 5% growth goals there for each of those numbers, which is still, somewhat, a moderate, for, it's one grade level, so it's not a huge sample of kids. So a 5% growth is still a pretty decent goal to set. Any questions about the foster high levels of learning for all? So again, we're focusing on forward exam just because district-wide is the macro big picture overarching. So, and then down below, I got ahead of myself before. So down below is the promoting growth part. That's where we look at the CERT or the FastBridge test. That's those screeners that they do in the fall, the winter, and the spring. And so this is broken down by age groups again. So at the top we have high school, and they use the CERT test, which CERT is tied heavily to the ACT. And so you can see our math was a low percent, 14% considered to be at benchmark currently starting out. So we have a pretty aggressive growth rate over there, right? A 10% growth rate for the whole high school. That's a pretty aggressive. And I think we can do that because we look at last year and we had a pretty aggressive growth rate. And then for the, what is that?
Sorry, it's my watch going on. I apologize.
Okay.
I'm like, what is going on?
Anyway, ELA is starting off at a higher percentage, and so but we still did a 10% growth rate for that. And then middle school does FastBridge, again, reading and math. You can see that the FastBridge test for the middle school had a very high percent, 85 and 82% coming in considered to be at benchmark. So because of that, setting them a little more moderate goal there. That'll be interesting for us to monitor and see this year if, because 80% is kind of where you hope to be. So that's great news coming in. That's awesome. So we'll see if we have the ability to sustain that, because you're supposed to show growth from that. So that's interesting. And then FastBridge is the elementary school. So we've got, we are measuring students who are below the 30th percentile. Okay, so this is a growth goal. So taking the FastBridge screener at that rate, and it's percentage of kids who are below the 30th percentile, and we are trying to shrink that. Okay, so just remember that that's a opposite goal there. So we're trying to make that, for K1, that 20%, we're trying to make it, reduce it down to as low as 15%. So that would mean that 85% would be above. So the focus on that for growth is just to track our students who are struggling to see if they're making gains, as opposed to the other end of the spectrum with the elementary. And then any questions on that? Some of this is the same data you're going to see from the buildings too, so that'll save a little bit of time later on, I guess. So some of it's very same or similar. So, and then if there aren't any questions on those. Okay, the support well-being, recognize strengths, and create engagement. So this is stuff we haven't really focused on quite as much at this level, talking about at meetings. So this is where we're using a lot of our school perceptions data. And you can see on the left-hand column is taking specific questions that students answered. Most days I like my school, for example. or percentage of students reporting engagement with staff. Like if I need help, I have at least one adult at school I can talk to. And then also tracking the third one there, percentage of junior and senior high students who participate in at least one co-curricular or club activity. So all these things are meant to track engagement. So how do I feel about my school, being at school? Do I have an adult that I can connect with and trust and help me? And then am I participating in activities? So some of it from the school perceptions data, some of it you'll see is listed as just a raw number, and some of it is listed as a percentage. The ones that only have a raw number is because the way that the school perceptions data comes in, which is it's based on what you guys saw back in June when they zoomed in with us. It's not a percentage. It's a raw number out of 10 or out of whatever or out of 5 or whatever it may be. So what I tried to do to be open about it on the left-hand side is it lists, what is the comparison score. So in other words, compared to other schools with similar demographics as us across the country, where are they scoring versus where are we scoring, and what are we trying to, aspire to or meet or beat or whatever. The thing with the school perceptions data, if you all remember, one of the things that Rob, who zoomed in with us and talked with us and led us through this, is that because you're talking about a large number of students or parents when you're talking about the school perception stuff, and you're measuring how they feel about something. You're not measuring a test score. You're measuring how they feel. He said that data moves very slowly. He said, you're not going to take a survey in the fall, do a strategy for 8 months, and then measure it again in May and see a bunch of change. He goes, that's just not how it works. He said you're going to see smaller incremental growth on those things. So, and I think that's when he even talked about some of the surveys doing it every year at the minimum, or at the no less than that. But sometimes even every other year is going to show maybe some of the changes that you want to see. Do you guys have questions about some of the numbers that you see there, or any of the data that you see? Or what it means? Like you're looking at the number going, what exactly does that mean?
Well, back on the math on the promote growth portion, we got the math at 14% on the high school and high school ELA at 43%. Those are pretty poor scores, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how can we have our middle school be so high, and then they get into high school and...
Well, remember it's a different test too. So the CERT is based on the ACT, so it's measuring ACT readiness, which is pretty rigorous. The FastBridge, we're only in our second year using FastBridge for ELA, right? We started using it last January for ELA in the middle school, and math started using it last fall. So yeah, we're kind of learning, I guess, what the trends are.
Greg, I think important to remember there with those high school scores with CERT is measuring what those kids, if they took the ACT tomorrow, what their predicted score would be, and we got a year of growth yet, and so I think that number's gonna jump up. It did last year as well. It started low because it says, okay, if we took the ACT today, this is what you would score. Well, now we've got a year of growth. They take it again, and we tend to grow that number of who's hitting benchmark quite a bit. And then also keep in mind that it's the ACT, so it's the benchmark is college and career ready, and so it's not necessarily grade level.
So does that include the freshmen and sophomores as well?
So they've got the pre-ACT.
Okay.
Yeah, freshman, sophomore,
similar test. Yes.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Good question. Any other questions so far of what we've looked at? Any of the numbers or the data or what it means or how we came up with that goal? Or
it's amazing how much data we have to look at now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we said too. No, it's been awesome though. I mean, it's driven some pretty powerful conversations among the admin team, but also on our staff. game changer. And this will go on our website, here soon. And then under encourage future goals, this is one of those that's a work in progress where we don't have the data yet. So we had determined last year that we're going to use our Zello completion percentage, which Zello and Mr. Melberg, and I'm stealing your thunder a little bit here too, because that's the career readiness survey that the kids do, and the goal is that we're going to grow the percentage of kids that complete all the activities related to that. So those are the things with Pillar 1 with student related. And then I will, just for the District 1, talk a little bit about the staff one, and particularly the first item. So if you scroll down to Pillar 2 staff, the recruit and retain, we had talked about at this time of year to kind of close out. And again, looking back on it next year, I'll just include this in the September report when we talk. I don't know why. I don't know. We did this last spring. We came up with our timeline and it made sense at the time, but we're going to realize as we go through this, we're going to tweak things and move things around a little bit. But one of the pieces of data that we're going to start tracking is teacher and, well, not just teacher retention rate, all staff retention rate. And so Eve had helped me with this and put a bunch of data together, and we actually did this late summer or midsummer, June, July, I think. July maybe. So what we do is we take the number of staff that you start the school year with, the number of staff that you end the year with, and it's just just use a simple formula, and you don't count retirees, and you don't count if we had this situation, which we didn't. If we had a situation where the employer decided to end the contract or whatever, you don't count those either. But this is just tracking people who voluntarily, they left for another position elsewhere similar, or they left the profession or whatever it is, and you're tracking your retention rate. So you do a simple equation, and you take the number of people that left and you divide it by the total number that you had. And so our goal is to keep that above a 90% retention rate, and for 23-24 we did. So we can see we did all district employees, and then faculty, meaning teachers, and then support staff. So really, remarkably, they're all really similar, 93.6, 93.9, 93.3, which was pretty interesting. I don't think we'll see it be that similar over time, probably. Then our retention rate last year was, I remember my first year in the summer of 22, we had a lot of transitions. We had a lot of changes, and I think we'd figured out 24% of positions had turned over in the district. Not all new people, but some just people moving different positions and stuff. So there's a lot of change that year. It was a little bit less last year, and then less this year too. So that we appreciated that. And then under recruit and retain too, we just have, and these aren't necessarily written so much as SMART goals, but just having a metric to just kind of measure ourselves by. So looking at, and we've shared this at the board level, this CISA 11 annual compensation survey. We look at what other districts are doing, and I have that chart that I've shared with the board in the past to see, how do we compare for teachers and for support staff. And then the other thing is, so we talk about lagging data and leading data, and one of our leading indicators we're going to use is development of stay interviews, and we talked about that probably at the gallery walk this summer. But rather than having exit interviews, interview our people who are here currently and ask them questions, 3 or 4 key questions about their engagement here and their employment here, to get a read on how people are feeling, not when they leave, but when they're not leaving. So, and then we also have the other question on the left there, another data point that we'll track is the school perception survey. How likely are you to recommend the district as a place of employment? And that was one that we beat the median score on that when we took it last year. So our goal is to make sure that we remain above that median score, because we're 7.3 and it was 7.04. So.
Have you done any of those interviews yet?
Nope. Our goal is to have them done by mid-year, by January. to have that as kind of a mid-year, leading indicator in that middle column. And not that we're going to have data to share, or obviously that we're going to share personal but just more, it's our way, it's our check-in on the mood isn't the right word to use, but just check in on the status of how things are going. Just to go through the preview of the rest of the Pillar 2 from the district level, as far as recognize and support staff and develop staff. And again, a lot of this is based on, you can see the survey questions on the left from our school perception survey. That is obviously a pretty rich source of information. But one of the questions, I feel supported and recognized by my colleagues when I do a good job. Maintain that at that 85%. We had a nice score there that beat the comparison scores fairly significantly. And then a staff survey, I feel comfortable sharing input and concerns with my supervisor or administrator, increase from 85% to match the comparable, which is a little bit higher. We were at 3.95 and the comparable was 3.96, so pretty much right on the average. And then development staff survey, I have opportunities for training, professional development. We had a real nice 91% response there, 4.05, and want to maintain that at that, above that comparable of 3.85 or higher. And then also survey question, in the last year I've received useful feedback to help improve my work. Maintaining at that comparable of 3.62 out of 5 is the comparable. We were at 3.68. So maintaining that level or above.
So your plan is to use school perceptions again mid-year or at the end of the year?
We would do it more at the end of the year again. Yeah, in the spring.
And is that part of the same contract, or would you have to recontract?
We would have to recontract, and that's where we may not want to do everyone every year. Maybe we do the staff every other year, and we do the parents every other year opposite of that, and maybe we do the students every year. It was one thing we kind of threw around as an idea. Particularly when some of the staff ones right now are pretty good and kind of exceeding the median, so maybe isn't quite as vital to it's more like checking in to see that it's maintaining. But in the meantime, we're still keeping, we're still using those strategies that are in the middle column to try to maintain and build on that. Other questions? Okay, if none, then we could move on to just go right through them in order. And I know I did kind of, like I say, steal some of the thunder from some of the school scorecards. So I guess that in a sense we can save a little time. Some of we will have heard already. So
Sure.
I'll turn it over to Mrs. Anderson.
Okay. I'm hoping some of the cheering in the background is picked up, because it sounds like we have some audience
something good is
Yeah.
happening.
like there's cheers like every few moments, so we'll hope that's the same. So the current scorecard, if you were familiar with the old one, the previous year, you'll notice that the goals have stayed the same as the percentages of growth and the percentage that we're looking for. Because last year we were just building it as we were going. For me and the admin team, when I was in discussion for this scorecard, keeping that similar type goal to really now see if there's some, real good growth with that. So you'll notice that if you would compare them side by side, you will see very similar language. It's just now understanding a little bit more about the goal setting.
Okay, Mona.
So, we can read line by line, if that is what you'd like, or just kind of scan across. So that foster high levels of learning for all, that is that forward exam. We have the spring scores. 3rd through 6th grade takes that in the elementary school, so that is the cohort of students, and it's divided there by ELA and math. Wanting to increase that score by 6% of students scoring on the median or advanced on the forward exam. And we will not know that. The forward exam happens in April, and then we receive the scores late summer. So that is that time where we're excited to see, but we get some good indications as we do our fast bridge tests throughout the year to kind of give us an idea of where our students are. So it isn't necessarily always a surprise. Foster high levels of learning for all. That's using that fast bridge screener. The elementary has used it for a number of years, so it's not new to us per se. Each reading and math has separate goals because the kindergarten and first grade test is very different than the 2nd through 6th grade. It's just not comparable. You cannot compare the two. So that's why there's 2 for reading and 2 for math that kind of run alongside each other. And, coming in with some very high percentages of students that are at benchmark or better, and certainly wanting to grow on that for sure. Questions so far on that first page? All right, moving into the promoting growth. It's really focusing in on those students that are falling below the 30th percentile, and understanding that their win time, what I need now, and having those interventions, which, because we know what our spring score is in fast bridge, we can really get our students set up right away. We don't have to wait for the fall fast bridge score to start interventions. I was at a conference once and they said no child has perished by having an intervention that they maybe didn't need. So we really jump right in. Within the first 2 weeks of school, we've got groups going, and we really get that started and then make adjustments for sure once we get their current scores. But we definitely do not waste a moment as the school year begins. So wanting to decrease that percentage that are falling below that 30th by 5%. Questions on that? All right, and then supporting well-being, recognize strength, create engagement. We ended the year at 94%, and we want to increase that by 2%. So we're just going to continually increase that. And then the positive postcards, they're printed and ready for teachers to start. We're going to do that twice a year. Last year we just did it once. Every student in the elementary received it, so that was 100%. This year we're going to do it kind of a start now and get through first semester, and then print a new stack and do that again. It was really, even in the grocery store, people coming up to me, my kiddo got their positive postcard in the mail. And we try to encourage not necessarily their classroom teacher doing that, which sometimes they just want to give that extra little burst of encouragement, but we try to pass those around. They choose kids that they've had a connection with, and so it shows that it's the school community that is really supporting the kids, not just their classroom teacher. And then finally, the Zello career inventory. We just do that in the spring with our 6th graders. One thing that Mrs. Van Hoeklam and I have discussed to kind of really encourage that future goals, it's not a data point on our scorecard, but we are looking to do an elementary career day and really start focusing a little bit more on, a pre-K on up, and understand a little bit about what's out there for us, some of those big dreams, and really starting to allow kids to see what that path could be like. So when they do get over here, maybe they've already been instilled with some passion for a certain career or job. That's new news to Mr. Malberg and Mr. Peterson. I was going to say that today at our meeting. So we're hoping for February to do some sort of special day for that. Questions on the elementary scorecard?
I would just to kind of keep with the flow of some things, like the top, your with the Ford exam, if we could maybe write in there what 6% increase would be, the actual number, just so it's, it kind of goes back and forth a couple times throughout the document.
Sure. Make it a little more readable.
Yeah. Otherwise, it looks great.
Or just the way the goals are written, I realize we're all writing them ourselves. You know, we're doing
Yeah.
our own document, and so yeah, we might have worded them a little bit differently from the other buildings or something. Yeah.
Thank you.
You might want to copy Mr. Malberg's.
What's that?
Just saying.
Fail? No.
Yeah, 2024, 2025, like very
Recorded?
Yeah.
specific
Get
goals.
that.
Live.
Yes, and we talked about that
We
actually.
get that in the minutes, please.
We did talk about that as a possible thing.
I just opened the next one, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
it's exactly what Matt wanted.
All right, so if you've got the high school one open, much like Mrs. Anderson's, a lot of stuff rolled over, but we made a few adjustments. So under foster high levels of learning for all, if you look at the top one is our junior class. Last year we did that each class was going to meet the state average. And for the most part, we got a lot of greens and yellows across the board on those. So the thought going into this year was, okay, if we hit a green, we don't want to keep that same goal. So we want to increase that 6%, which has been pretty consistent across all the scorecards. So this year, we're comparing same group of kids to the same group of kids. So the juniors will increase their ACT class average by 6% over their previous year's pre-ACT. So last year they took pre-ACT as sophomores. We've got those scores. Those are the 2024 scores that are listed there. We're going to try and increase each of those scores by 6%. And the other thing, writing it this way, I think, which was going to be helpful for us is if we came up short, we can get there this year. And then the other helpful part is as we get down to the freshmen, our goal with the freshmen is that they're going to hit the state average. And then if we continue to grow by 6% each year, we're going to be in a pretty good spot by the time that they're juniors. At least that's the lofty goal that we have. So junior class, sophomore class are going to increase their previous year score by 6%. Again, same group of kids compared to the same group of kids. Scrolling down, the freshmen, there's no real way that I have figured out to take what they've done in middle school and elementary school in the Ford exam and make a comparison to the pre-ACT. So we're going to start the freshmen with a goal of trying to hit the state average. And I did put this year the state average from the previous pre-ACT assessment. And the only reason I did that is we get our scores back pretty quickly in the spring, and then I have to wait a long time to see what the state average is, and it doesn't move all that much, and I'm not that patient, so I'd rather I want to know when we get our scores back if we hit the previous year's state average. And then from there, the plan moving forward is that we would grow them by 6% through their junior year, each year. Moving down to our 7th and 8th graders, different tests. They've got the Ford exam, much like the elementary school and many of their tests. And our goal there is that we will increase their Ford test percentile rank by 5% over their 7th. So the 8th graders will increase their own scores by 5% over their 7th grade scores. And then the same for the 7th graders, will increase theirs by 5%. So the numbers that you see there, so if we look at math in 2024, 65, that means that the class average percentile rank on where they finished was the 65th percentile. And so our goal is to increase that by 5% and get that up to the 68th percentile.
So that's last spring.
Last spring.
Okay.
Yep.
So all the 2024 numbers are last spring.
Our last spring's
Okay.
final test. And then if you look over to the right, this is what they scored, their average score was on this fall's
fall, okay.
Fast Bridge. And
You're
that's
obviously
our
gonna-
leading indicator.
Okay, and you're obviously going to get a little bit of a drop. Because
You get a little bit of a summer drop, I think.
We've been
Yep.
gone for summer.
Yep. But I still think with the numbers that we see there, I think we're on track to hit these goals. So questions, foster the high levels of learning for all. So the next one, promote growth, and just like the other two scorecards is we're focused on maybe some of our struggling learners. And so with the pre-ACT and the ACT is we want to the number of high school students scoring below the approaching. So the DPI puts them in different categories. And so scoring below approaching on that test will decrease by 6%. So in 2024, 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, we had 20% of our kids that scored approaching or below. We're going to try and decrease that number by 6%. We'll continue to do that until we get a number that we're happy with, which will be 0, I guess. I'm not sure we'll ever get there, but we'll keep shooting for it. And then with our 7th and 8th graders, again, a little different test, so a little different measurement. We look at students scoring below the 25th percentile on the forward exam. We want to decrease the total number of students scoring below the 25th percentile by 6%. So you can see the numbers there. In 2024, we had 16% on the ELA portion. We're going to try and get that to 15%. And then on the math portion, we had 14%. We're going to try and knock that down to 13% and just keep whittling away and try and close that gap by getting more and more kids over that hump. Questions there? Support well-being, recognize strengths, and create engagement. We're going to increase the number of high school students actively involved in a club or a sport by 6%. So our 2025 goal, there's going to be 73% of our students in the high school will be actively involved in either a club or a sport. I should have that number, at least a leading indicator sometime soon. We're just getting signed up, officially signed up for some of the clubs. So I'd like to wait until we have that official sign up, not just the kids that are showing up to the meeting that are interested. And then we'll increase the number of students who agree with the statement. If I need help, I have at least one adult at school I can talk to by 6%. So you can see in 2024, 79.5%. We're going to try and bump that up into the mid-80s.
I don't see any recess on here.
No
This is
recess.
high school.
I don't know.
They
if
lost
did.
rap. We're not going to talk about recess.
And then encourage future goals. Our CTE department has been working really hard on this. We've made some great progress on preparing some systems to put in place to make sure that these things are happening. So the first one is 95% of our in-person students will complete 100% of their grade assigned Zello lessons each year. That's our academic career planning software. They are in the works of putting a plan in place. They created an initial plan. They went back to the drawing board, decided we had to fine tune some things before we roll it out because we want to roll it out right. And they've got, we're real close to rolling this plan out, and they've done a really nice job of getting us prepared for that. So this is going to be a new system that'll be in place that we haven't done here the last few years. All in-person students will fill out an academic goal sheet. That was just, we wanted something in there to get us started on making sure that kids are setting goals in the classroom. We've achieved that. That'll actually become, in the future, that'll become part of the Zello stuff. They'll set their goals in there. We'll be able to combine those things, but this got us off the ground and moving. And then the last one is all in-person students will be provided opportunities for college visits and/or workplace shadowing each year. Again, the CTE department has created a really nice spreadsheet to track this for every kid in the building to see how many times throughout the year that they have an opportunity to be on a college campus or in a workplace shadowing situation. And once we get moving, I'll have some pretty good data for you there. I can tell you right now that 21.4% of our high school students have already had one of these opportunities this year. And we're going to continue to track that number and get it so that 100% of our 7-12 kids have at least one of these opportunities. They're all going to have multiple chances at these opportunities. We just want to make sure that every one of them is at least participating in one of these a year.
Can I ask, as a parent,
Yep.
when there's elective abilities to do those kind of things, can we make sure we're getting information to the parents so they can help that student make that decision?
Well, what we're doing, absolutely yes. But what we're doing here is stuff that we are going to do during the school day, not just hey, there's a flyer over here. We are going to take all of our juniors on a college visit, or as many of them as we can. All of our sophomores, all of our freshmen, different speakers that are coming in. We're tracking what we're doing within the school day to take advantage of those opportunities.
Can you also tell me a little bit more about Zello?
Yeah, it's a software program where kids get in. You know, one of the first things that they do is they take an interest survey, and it tells them different potential career clusters that they might be interested in based on how they answered their those survey questions, and then they can do more things within there to learn about those career clusters, to know what kind of schooling that they would need, what they would. What different job shadowing opportunities there would be, and then it also tracks what they're doing, so they can add in when they build a resume in one of their classes, they can put that in there, so now they've got a starting point when they are applying for a job. It tracks, they can track their community service, and so it becomes a nice tool when kids are applying for scholarships. They can go back and throughout 6th grade and up, they can track over that time all these things that they did within this software program.
It's kind of an evolution of, so back years ago, almost every school used was called WIS Careers, Wisconsin WIS Careers, and then it was Career Cruising and Zello. So it's kind of the similar, but they updated and evolved it over time. I think it's this. I believe, I could be wrong. I think it might be the same group or the same as, they just keep updating it and trying to improve it. I think I could be wrong on that, but for the new name.
And it's something that
Good stuff.
We have used in, like Mrs. Hunter uses it in one of her classes, and this is just, we're going to use it school-wide, and get kids in there and more active in it, to kind of help them start thinking about what they want to do after high school. And then on top of that, if they want to, if these are their goals, okay, what do I need to do, and what types of classes should I be taking here to prepare me for what I want to do after high school?
Do we get any data from that?
As far as,
Let's say we have a bunch of kids that want to go into, that are interested in nursing or something like that, and do we get that
We get the
data
school
where
data? It's a
we
good
can
question.
create classes or curriculum around their interests, or?
I'll ask that question. I'm not sure.
Or get them hooked up into the CNA.
Creating your connection.
I'm not,
No, I
I'm
mean,
just
if we have a
saying
kid that
if
comes
we
back and
can
says,
create curriculum in
nursing
certain
is what I
ways, like in
want.
our tech department, where, if our kids have a certain interest in robotics or something, is there something that we can create
Yeah.
curriculum-wise that?
So you're asking for, general is like all of a sudden we're seeing an uptick in the number of kids that are interested in robotics, and that
Right.
we would potentially, I'm not sure, I'll ask on that.
Using it as feedback to plan our future curriculum.
Yeah.
Who's all involved in the CTE PLC? Like
So
who?
that's going to be Mrs. Hunter, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Larson, Mrs. Peterson,
Okay.
Tech Ed, Ag,
Yeah. I just-
Consumer
Yeah.
Ed,
Career and
Business.
technical education.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. So, looking at our special ed scorecard, so I'm looking at, for the elementary students with disabilities, 3rd through 6th grade, to increase their forward ELA scores by 6% from what they were, what they were to what we want them to go in this spring. And, looking at, I changed it from like last year where I talked about trying to jump them proficiency level. But if you're at a kid that's at in the middle of the approaching level, it's sometimes, or at the beginning of the approaching level, to get all the way to meeting benchmark is a big jump for our kids with disabilities. So I really want to focus on, where they were to increase that by 6%. Because like if you're at the 5th percentile in ELA, you're not going to jump from developing into approaching because you're so far down compared to everybody else. So I'm looking more at that. And like our 3rd graders this year, so when I was looking at their fast bridge scores and things like that for like reading and things like that, 3rd grade I didn't really have anything to compare to other than their fast bridge scores in 2nd grade, because obviously they didn't take the forward exam next year, but they will this year. So that's kind of the same thing for math too, to go and do that by 6%. So if they're at the fifth, or if they're at the first percentile in math, then I want to get them to the 7th percentile in math. You know, looking at and just trying to keep building, because it is more difficult for a lot of our students with special needs to move a bigger jump than some of our general education students, just because of the way that they need to learn and things like that. It just takes them a little bit longer.
Like when we were looking at it this spring, we found that there were students with special needs who, they didn't meet the goal because, they didn't go from level 1 to level 2.
Right.
But yet we looked at their individual growth. It's like, wow, they grew a really nice amount, and we wanted to capture that because the goal made it look like they didn't accomplish anything when they actually did.
So I have looked at each of our special ed kids and figured out what their test percentile was on forward and ELA and in math, and then I've looked at each one of our special ed kids on forward and ELA in Fastbridge and was comparing those. And it's a little bit different for me than it is for Teresa or Brian, where they can get just kind of an overall percentage, but I have to dig down to one of individual kids. So it just takes it's just a little bit different. And our percentage, obviously, too, is less. So like if I look at the 3rd through 6th graders that took Fastbridge ELA, I had 22 students, 3rd through 6th. Now math, I had 21 because one of our little guys was not able to complete the math portion because they just behaviorally, they were having difficulties. And then I've also had parents who have opted them out from taking the Fastbridge, and then one particular parent will be opting them, this particular student probably opting him out of forward just because it causes such anxiety for the child. So I'm looking at a little bit different kinds of numbers. And so then junior high, same kind of thing. We'll increase their forward ELA scores by 6% for reading and math. And I was able to base that off of, last year's forward and then this fall's Fastbridge, just to kind of compare their scores and their percentile ranks, just to kind of look at that. And then senior high, I met with Mr. Melberg on Friday and was like, okay, how do we want to do this for our kids? And we really kind of looked at, do we look at ELA, do we look at math, do we look at reading, do we look at all three, or do we look at their composite score overall? And we were just kind of discussing that, looking at their composite score overall, which encompasses reading, ELA, math, science, and if we can get them to increase their composite score, they're going to increase their scores in those other areas too. So we were just like, okay, instead of breaking it down and I have to look at each individual kid in all three of those areas, let's really focus on their composite score, because the composite score, if we can get their composite score to increase, it not only helps obviously our students with special needs, but it helps, Brian's overall things when he's looking at his data too, and how our district is performing for scorecard, for like state scorecard and things like that, because they are looking at, those scores too. So, so that would be for high school. For promoting growth, I talked about to reduce the achievement gaps, the number of students with disabilities in grades 3 through 8 below the 5th percentile will decrease by 6% on this year's forward exam. So we really dug down into which kids on the forward were less than the 5th, or the 5th percentile or less. And we're like, okay, we want to shrink that number. So that means they need to grow 6% more. So then looking at that, if you look in the fall column, you'll see that how many of our kids that were above the 5th percentile in grades 3 through 8, 48% were above the 5th percentile. So I want to, so even though we're saying decrease in the goal part, when you look at it in the mid-year, I want that 48 to go up 6%. You know, so that we're like, okay, now we don't have 48%, we've got, you know, 54% are now above that 5th percentile, to show that they're growing. And that goes for reading and math. And then same type of thing for our high school students, because they use the CERT. And we looked at the composite score, and we were looking at just all of our kids and having a composite score. If they scored below an 11, then we want to have the percentage of kids that are below 11 increased by 6%. And currently we have 31% of our students who are above the 11 for their composite score. Does that make sense? Questions on that?
I think it would just help us if we actually spelled out what the goal number is. Because so many of these have a different calculation and a different interpretation than if you said, like, for the ELA, like you said, you're starting at 48, your goal is really 54. It would be nice if it just
To put
said
the
goal of
54 in
54.
there. I
So
can do
that
that. Yeah.
when you're looking at this, or if we're ever going to share this with the public, this could be misinterpreted in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I definitely have that.
It's not just you, it's just
Across the
overall,
board.
I think
Mhm.
we need to do a better job of spelling out the end goal.
And then support well-being and recognizing strengths to create engagement. It'll kind of the same thing as what we did last year, because our special education students are first and foremost general education students. So we want them to be involved the same way as all of our other students. So you know, it will be that the special education and student service staff will contribute to the creation and maintenance of a culture of care, recognizing the strengths by supporting what the elementary goal was. And then the same thing by supporting what the high school goal is. Because our special ed staff, you know, Mr. Melberg might assign, okay, this student hasn't connected with a sport or something. You know, Miss Barland, you have a really good relationship with this student, so let's have you try and help them figure out what they want to do, you know, to have them support that way. And then at the elementary, you know, through the survey, but then our special ed staff, including myself, I mean, it's everyone who, you know, we do the postcards, you know, I'll pick kids that I know that aren't special ed, and I'll write out a postcard to them. You know, same thing with our special ed staff. They may pick someone that is not one of their own kids, or maybe they had prior, or, you know, it's just another kid in the school that they can make connections with. So it's not just that they're just working with the special ed kids all the time, but they're making those connections as a community. And then encourage future goals. This was, we want to have the special ed staff, you know, contribute to the creation and maintenance of transition and work experience opportunities in the area and or locally, you know, in the area or locally for students with disabilities. We have some of our special ed students right now in the high school that are going and doing work release, and, you know, our special ed teachers have been working with like Mr. Larson and things like that, and getting those kids work experience outside. We've also had in the past where we have had, you know, some of our students have done things in the kitchen and or have supported, you know, the janitorial staff and had those kinds of work, you know, on-site work, you know, experiences too. So one of our other things is that 90% of our students with disabilities in grades 10 through 12 will participate in 2 or more of the 4 strategies listed on the side, which are, you know, that all of our kids grades 7 through, or grades 8 through 12, because they are 14 and above, they all complete a transition skill interest inventory. And that is not the same as the Zello. That is right from DPI, that focuses on transition skills for students with disabilities. So then they wheedle down some more. It does have some similarities to Zello, but it does focus more on students with disabilities and what they are. And then from that, from doing that and other things, we have, it's called a PTP plan, which in all students 14 and older have to have a PTP plan, which is a post transition plan from when they leave high school and what they're going to do. And the teachers use that interest inventory and work with the student to figure out, okay, what classes should they be taking through high school to meet some of these goals that they want to do, to get to, maybe be a CNA, maybe, go to a 2-year tech, those kinds of things, whatever they happen to be interested in, whether it's a welding job or, do they have to have some kind of certificate program. And so then what we want to do this year is really focus on inviting with the parents' permissions, because we can't just invite anybody, but we want to have parents' permission to invite DVR services, which is the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation Services that work with students and adults with special needs when they're in high school, can be too, because they'll help, focus on, how to do an interview. Besides what our teachers are doing, they'll actually sit in for interviews with students. Like, say a student applied to work at Quick Trip. When they are assigned to a DVR counselor, a lot of times the counselor then will come into the school, meet with the student, and they'll practice doing those interviews, like an interview, Zoom interview, a phone interview, and the DVR counselor will be next to them, working on those skills with them and helping them trying to find jobs outside of school. So we want to invite the DVR services to the IEP so that the students can get connected with those services, the parents can get connected with those services, because there is a waiting list. And so we really want to, go and have them start in 11th grade having DVR in there, so that by the time they're out of high school, they have their counselor and they have that connection. And then same thing, develop one or more college tech school visits or one or more local work experience site for students with disabilities. And then we're working on trying to figure out when we want to do a transition event. DVR has already said that yes, they would be our person that is for our area. He's already saying, yep, I'll come up. We'll be part of that, kind of having more of a job fair / transition kind of thing with just our families with special needs, students, so that the parents and the students can go and, and then maybe have our students involved in setting up, cooking snacks or, things like that, so that when the event goes on, people can do different things, get them more involved in it. And, besides DVR, look at some local businesses who would be willing to come in, to talk about what they do there and what kinds of jobs kids would be, could look for. And maybe, by bringing those businesses in too, we can see if possibly they would be okay with having someone through either DVR or one of our teachers do some job shadowing, and they'll be more apt to do kinds of things like that, Nielsen's, Oxbow, wherever they would say it'd be okay. And so we just really want to focus on getting those kinds of things done. And so I've created a tracking sheet so that has all of our students, 8th grade and up, that has the tracking form, so that the teachers can say, okay, we've done this, they've gone on a college visit, they've done that, they came to the event. You know, obviously we're gonna focus more on the data for the older kids because that's that kind of transition time, but still we wanna have all that 8th grade, you know, 14 and up, so that they can start realizing, oh, this is what the other kids that I know that are older, that's what they're doing too, and kind of get that to be the norm. And get that to be a norm for parents too, to just say, okay, so it's not just, they're done with high school, what do we do now? You know, we need a little extra support. We need, you know, whether we get them hooked up with DVR or ARDC, which is the adults disability program, you know, getting ARDC in for, you know, during that transition event too. So a couple different resources.
The goal would be,
Questions?
do 2 out of those 4 options.
Yep, 2 out of those 4 options at least. We want those 11 through 12 graders to do 2 out of the 4 at least.
Since you're the last one, the only question I have is why haven't we included Pillar 2 in these guys' plans too? Like, as far as retention and those kind of things.
Well, they have it in their plans. We just, the way we had calendared it out, we didn't plan to talk about that tonight for them. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, it's built into the calendar that we'll review it with at all the levels. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's in their plans.
Pillar 2 in the first one.
Yeah, it's in their plans. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so mine kind of hits some of that, you know, the encourage future goals kind of hits some of that Pillar 2 stuff.
Oh, Pillar 2 is the staff stuff.
You know, the staff. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking Pillar 3, which is community
And a lot of the goals in the buildings support the district-wide goals because our staff goals are kind of district-wide too. So, good question. Okay, a lot of information. Pillar 1 is intense because that's all the academic stuff. So, you know, the other pillars are not quite as in-depth, and I think we as a team and the staff too is spending the most time on that right now because that's pretty intense with all the academic achievement stuff.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, then we're going to move on to.
So yeah, I guess one more last question. So out of all these goals, what would you all say that would be aggressive goals? Our most aggressive goals?
Which specific ones in there?
Yeah.
Well, that might be a lengthy answer. I mean, we'd have to go, I mean, there's a lot of goals we just went over. So I guess as we're going through, if you see some of them that have the bigger percentages, like that goal setting document, that guidance document, some of them that have the higher percentage, you know, you look at the number of kids involved and the level of percent, you know, so, and typically the ones where we have the lower score to begin with is where we have the more aggressive goal, I guess, as a general rule. We'd have to go back and review all of them, but hopefully you got a sense for that. If we wanted to dive deeper into it too, we could always review it again or do that outside of a meeting too.
Right.
All right, then we're going to move on to our 24-25 budget preview.
Okay, and this is not a ton of stuff. It's the main point of it is just to revisit the fact that we're getting a little bit more specific data coming in now. So we know when we do the annual meeting in August that we have a lot of factors that aren't totally figured out yet. You know, our actual student count, our open enrollment in and out, our equalized aid, you know, valuation, things like that. So as we get through the fall here, more and more of those pieces of data start trickling in, and then we're waiting, you know, actually tomorrow or the day after, then we'll start to get more reports from the DPI, and then actually later this week on Thursday I'm going to a workshop where we'll really try to finalize things with our revenue limit worksheet. So the first, and if some of the stuff is hard to look at, I actually did make some paper copies, even though, and this is more, you can take this as a reference, take it home, we're not going to sit and go through all this, but the first document on there is the equalized valuation, and this came out like in late August, mid to late August. So the point I want to make here, the big picture takeaway is when we projected our budget, our revenue limit in July and early August, before the annual meeting and before the preliminary budget, we said we projected like a 10% increase in the total valuation of property. We said, let's do a little more conservative this year, 10%, because last year was 21%, and the year before that it was 17% growth. So we said, well, 10%, that's more conservative. Well, then the actual number came in at 3.6% for our district. So, which in a normal year you'd say, oh, that's just some nice growth, you know, but things haven't been normal lately with property values. So because of that, so the second document then is that revenue limit worksheet, and it's a 4-page document, but the one that really matters, so on the first page of it, it says Department of Public Instruction 24-25 revenue limit worksheet, and if you go down to the bottom, and it's a number that's in purple, it says actual 3.6% growth. That's a note that I typed in there. So you can see that valuation, that $407,249,694, that is the total valuation of all the property in the school district of Clear Lake. So the initial revenue limit sheet that we had in August had that number like somewhere like 438 or 428 million. I can't remember off the top. So it's just a smaller number. Okay. And then the other thing too is we had projected 546 for our student count. It's actually 548. That really isn't significant. It's 2 more students, so that increases our revenue limit capacity, but that also correspondingly reduces the, we get a little bit of a smoothing. I can't think of the term off the top of my head, but we get a revenue limit exemption for declining enrollment. So it just correspondingly decreased that. So it didn't change our amount of money that we're getting. And so the total all-fund tax levy on the bottom of the second page is still that $2,946,602. That's still our local levy. And if you remember, in August, it projected out at like a 6.8% or 6.84% mill rate. It actually now would be a 7.2. So it doesn't mean we're taxing any more actual dollars. We're the same amount of dollars. It's just in the equation you got the numerator, which is the tax levy, the denominator, which is the total value of all property. The denominator got a little smaller, so our mill rate looks to be more in that range there. And that may change a little bit once we get the actual equalized aid value numbers. And some of the other numbers on that page will be updated by DPI here too. So, and then the last document is just a historical, just kind of historical. The box at the end is what I have projected, the total levy, total equalized value, equalized rate, and then you can just kind of see, if you take the yellow and the blue, compared to 10 years ago, the yellow and the blue corresponding numbers, you can just see how the property values have doubled in the 10 years. And then you look at, last year, 6.86, that's the lowest mill rate I can find on this sheet. This goes back to 1984. So 6.86 is the lowest mill rate. And then the highest one I could find was 1992, 20.17 was the mill rate. So, but, the tax levy back then was $1.388 million. So, just function of the property values changing, that mill rate. So. Anyway, that's all I have. I don't have any other information than that other than to kind of give you a preview when we come back together for our special meeting next Wednesday. It's not a surprise that the mill rate's going to be higher than what we talked about before. Any questions?
Okay. Then we're going to move on. Thank you, Chris, to the review of homecoming.
Who wants to go first, Mr. Melbourne?
That's a bigger deal over in your building. So.
We had a great week, and like always, the kids kind of dictate how that week goes. And we had the kids were very involved, and then they went about it the right way too. They had a lot of fun. There's a ton of involvement in the hallway decorations. I think we had probably close to 140 kids on Monday night at outdoor games. We got 180 in the building. We had 120 kids at the dance on Saturday. So the student involvement was fantastic. The kids were great. So a huge thank you to the kids, a huge thank you to Mr. Crawford, who continues to do a great job with that week. And it was awesome. Kids were great, and football team got a win, and dance was fantastic. So I can't think of a negative thing that week. So very, very pleased, very happy.
Mr. Melberg forgot to thank me for chaperoning the dance.
Maybe he's not thankful.
And I brought a date.
And she brought a date. He keeps an eye on the punch.
Punch guy. So he was watching that punch like a hawk. A couple things that were highlights for our week in the elementary is, so we adopted a new ELA resource, so we have a lot of books that we don't need because the new resource brought in what we needed. So Casey Paulson and Andrea Gillick found a place called Books for Africa located in St. Paul, and they send them to schools in Africa so that are, kiddos learning how to read English. So to offset some of their costs, we did a penny war to, allow for some shipping costs, because it does cost a lot of money to get those books there. And the elementary raised $539 in a matter of 5 days. So that was pretty exciting, and my husband loaded up his vehicle today and took him to St. Paul and dropped off the check, and they were very, very thankful for that. So we're just excited that those books that we loved can now be shared with other kids, and the kids really rallied around that idea of, we got new books, we want to make sure some kids can use our books. A couple more quick things. Pep band and cheer came over for an assembly on Friday morning, which is always a highlight. When the big kids can come to the elementary school, it's a good day. So Mr. Vitalis and then Mrs. Nicholson and Ms. Van Hooklam getting that arranged was just fantastic. Thanks to the Clear Lake Police Department and Village. We have construction going on. I don't know if you've noticed around the elementary school, but we were in pretty close communication with the village just to make sure our kiddos could walk down the street safely, and we did it. So we're thankful that they were very conscientious working with the crew that's working to get all the machinery out of the way. And then finally, Mr. Melberg did allow me to drive his truck in the parade, although he left it a bit dusty. So I apologize if he didn't represent well. But.
Speaking of the parade, that's one highlight. I felt like the week just capped off with a great, it helps when you have just absolutely gorgeous weather. So, the parade was a big success. I thought it was one of the better parades that I can remember, just with the number of floats, or the number of units in it, and then to have a beautiful night for the game on Friday, and for the game, for the halftime show, capped off a really, and for the tailgate party as well, really capped off a good week in a great way. So.
Wish we could give Boyer high fives to some high school students.
We can.
There's a few that I think went above and beyond to make sure that kids got to the dance and felt included, and there's some pretty cool stories out there. So I was really proud of our high school kids and their inclusion of everyone. It was really cool.
Send me some names.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a bonfire that didn't get together.
Yeah. When do we get to burn that? Somebody said Christmas.
Yeah.
We might have to wait until there's snow on the ground.
It might be a
dry
Spirit Week bonfire. The rate we're going with the lack of rain.
The wind was blowing Monday night. Prairie Farm was in trouble if we lit that bonfire.
Yeah.
We waited, so we'll get it done though. It's waiting for us.
Yeah, the fire department was not comfortable burning that yet, so it was pretty dry and windy.
TJ and I didn't want to make the news. So.
Yeah.
All right, next item of business is the review of the emergency and safety drills.
Okay, so again, this is just an annual thing. So each year before the end of the calendar year, I submit to the Department of Justice some documentation of our safety plan, which we reviewed last month, and also documentation of the required drills that we hold. So this is just something that they want to see at a board meeting, that we've done this. So each year in the fall, we need to do a severe weather drill. It used to be those were just in the spring, but now we do it in the fall, and the spring is mandated, which is a good thing. We have severe weather certainly in September. And then a hold drill, and then a fire drill. And so just documenting that each building did those things to start the year off in the fall. And just, again, it's just oversight to make sure that it's happening. So. Any questions about any of those?
Okay, next time of business is the review of the third Friday student count and enrollment.
Okay, again, yeah, no action needed here too, but just nice to share what that is. I'll kind of walk you through the documents. So the first one is the certification page. So this is the thing that actually gets sent off to the Department of Public Instruction, and this reflects the pupil count. So remember, there's a couple of things here. There's a head count, which is the number of bodies in seats that are physically attending school in Clear Lake. And then there's the pupil count, which takes into account the open enrollees in and out. Okay, so they're two different things. So the certification page shows the actual pupil count, which was at 548. I had projected this summer at 546, so pretty close, but fortunately a couple students higher. The second document there is the second one is an Excel spreadsheet, and this just shows our actual head count. And it's at the top. I should relabel it to say third Friday head count, because this is again the number of actual students, actual bodies and seats, including virtual students. But these are the students that we are actually educating. So this includes students who are open enrolled in that actually attend school here. So I'm looking at the one that's got the real small boxes. It's got all the grades listed on the left from top to bottom. And then I've got some historical stuff that we can look at after that too in a minute. But you'll notice from our, 9th grade on down, you notice a change, right? So you can see our 3 largest classes currently are 12th, 11th, and 10th grades. And so then you get down to 9th grade on down, we have classes that are all in the 30s or less. We have one extremely small in kindergarten. So you're going to see as each year that those, a class of 40, 50 kids moves out and they're replaced by a class of 30-some kids, obviously we're going to see that drop off for the next 3 years, and then it is going to level out. And then in the long range, we're hoping that we continue to add students to our numbers, to our mix there. So the third document, or I'm sorry, I should stop. Did anybody have questions on any of the numbers that you see on there? And the reason we have all this data is because when we go through, so we do it as a team. So I have Mrs. Roble from the elementary, Mrs. Lavery from the high school, and Mrs. Blanchard, who does open enrollment across the district, and we sit in this room as a team and we go through, they do the homework in the week or two prior between the third Friday count, and we have about a week and a half later, we get together and we go and we compile all this data on here from the reports that they have, and then we take this and then we go into a DPI portal and we go page by page and add information, and they ask the questions in a very unique way, so you need to have all these little bits and pieces to dump into there. So if there's no questions on that third document is just some of the historical pupil count and head count, and again, just for your interest, showing going back the last 10 years plus. You can see how our head count is the number of bodies and seats. I put the head count for 9-12 on there just out of interest to see, because this is the number when we talk about, for example, the WIA, what division do you participate in athletics, that's your 9 through 12 head count is what they use. So for example, last year we reported 201, this year reported 189 to the WIA. And you can see going all the way back to 2014-15, you see we were as low as 166 back then too, right? For our 9-12.
Looking at the homeschooling, we started taking data, it looks like in 17-18, and you see how that's increased over the years to 77. If you take that 77 and subtract the 20 from back in 17-18, the total numbers of kids in our district has remained pretty constant. So that being said, that looks like that that would, if we're trying to get our numbers up, having conversations with these parents that have the elementary homeschool kids to get them when there's a change when their high school starts or when middle school starts, maybe we should put some effort into kind of fostering some relationships with those parents and and encouraging them to, hey, we've got FFA, we've got, and all these different things that these kids can participate in if they come to school. Maybe even is there an option for them to come to school halftime so we can somehow include them? And
yep. That's great. Exactly right on, and that's kind of part of our strategic plan. One of the outreach in there is, how can we create an outreach, and then is there a way that we can offer a program to, whether it involves some part-time or whether it involves some virtual, where we can at least capture some of that missing data there, the missing piece of part of our community. And you see that the major change is, after the pandemic. So 2021 was the affected year of, everyone was, doing all the mitigation strategies, and you see we had a significant increase, and I think we've just seen that number tick up, and people have kept there. One of the challenges, I think, in the 2020s years we're fighting is it's a lot easier to homeschool your kids nowadays than it was 10 or 20 years ago with all the virtual options. And I think we're seeing more people across our society, make those choices. But yeah, you're right. I think, Greg, just to, be able to promote what it is that we offer with an in-person experience in our buildings and what that can mean for students.
And one of the things that comes to mind with that, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but in years past, for a homeschool kid to be involved in our athletic program, they used to have to pay a fee, didn't they?
Well, no. Actually, homeschool students were not allowed to participate in, or not, we didn't have to allow participation for homeschool students up until, 5-8 years ago probably, and there was some legislation passed that required it. So if a student is a resident in your district and they're a homeschooler student and they want to participate in your athletic programs, they're allowed to do so. They do, we do require them, there's a form they have to fill out. They have to verify that they're participating in a program. Their parents have to verify that they do schooling, that they are not violating athletic code, that they're passing their classes. Now, the accountability to that is simply the parents, signing that. And I'm not saying they aren't doing those things, but it's just a different comparison. And yeah, we are not. We double checked on. I know that question's been asked before. We're not allowed to charge. We're allowed to charge them only what we would charge any of our regular students that attend here, because some schools do have participation fee. If you want to play a sport, you pay $50 or $100. We don't have any of that, and I'd love to keep it that way. But yeah, you're not allowed to charge the homeschool students any different than any other students. So it is that is a bit of a, and our homeschool students have been great participants in our programs. Have been great kids and great to have them there. But it is a bit of a rub with they're not part of the school, but yet get to be part of the team.
Right.
That was 2015 when that took effect too.
Okay, thanks.
I looked it up.
Thank you.
I knew it was fairly.
So I was 5-8 years ago.
Yeah.
8 more like 8, 9.
Yeah.
Well, let's just see what happens to that number going forward then.
Yeah. So some good. Our open enrollment differential is down a little bit, so that was a good thing to see too. So
yeah.
Anyway, and then any other? Let's see. Just the last document I had. There's a projection. So when people say, how do we know what our high school population is going to be? Well, we don't know for certain, but we can make a good projection. So that last document is just looking ahead, to see how we can see how our high school enrollment may go down into the 150s and 140s. Historically, we tend to add a handful of kids from elementary to senior year. We tend to add a handful of kids in most grades. So I'm hoping that those numbers don't get quite as low as what it says there, but we shall see.
All right, any questions on the student count? Then we'll move on to our next item of business, which is consideration/approval of designating school buildings as emergency disaster shelter with Polk County Community Services Division.
Okay, so brought this to the board last time to kind of just open up a conversation to say, do we want to consider this? The board had some, I think, for good reason, some reservations or questions. I had some too. I did. Based on what you guys said, I did reach out to our attorney to just get his advice, and just kind of summarizing, paraphrasing what he said was basically, he said, there's nothing in there that's really out of line, or there's nothing that I would be too afraid of signing. but he also said it's kind of maybe a little bit of overkill for what might be needed, and he said I can understand why they would have a document like that maybe, but he said it may be more than is necessary. I asked the question, I said, well, if we don't sign this, I said, certainly we would still be able to just open up our facilities to the community on our own and offer, shelter in the case of a disaster. He said, well, absolutely. So I guess, based on that conversation and your feedback, my recommendation would be to not sign it, just take no action. But we understand that we can always still be there to serve our community by, if a disaster were to hit, I think as a focal point in Clear Lake, we would want to be that resource for our people. So I guess I would recommend not taking any action.
I think I agree. I don't think.
Good. All right.
And I'll reach out to the Polk County and explain and just say, hey, we're still here to help, but we just are not going to sign the document.
Yeah. All right, that sounds good. Next time business then is the review of the board retreat for professional development on the 23rd of September.
And so we had Aaron Bylargen from CISA 11 come and talk about trauma-aware education, and so just putting that on the record of what we talked about that night. She spoke for about 45 minutes, had a nice Q&A after, and I don't know if the board had any other insights to share related to that.
No, she did a really nice job, and I think you picked good items for the strategic plan and for those scorecards, especially being that having that one adult and really monitoring that based on what she said, like that is one of those key things that we can do, and so us working on that is one of the easiest things we can do. So I thought that was kind of good how her message tied into some of the things we were already looking at.
Well, it was good to hear that we were one of her kind of star districts in the effort we're putting forth into some of the challenges that we have. So, yeah, it was a good one. All right. Any other comments? Next time, business. Go ahead.
I think it was a great speech and everything, and we learned a lot. But I just would like to see that somehow turn into some kind of action, I guess. And I don't know, has the district done anything towards, or had any thoughts about how to move forward with that needle on trauma? Or
well, I think a lot of what we've heard,
connecting with those parents that need that connection, and
yeah, I think a lot of what we've heard, like in June when we had our retreat too, you heard a lot from the principals and Mrs. Powers about some of those strategies, all related to that. And I think, like Christy said, it's, some of the strategies in the strategic plan, I think, reflect that. And really, having Aaron come talk to the board was kind of reflective of sharing with the board kind of what our staff has been hearing and working on, so that you have insight into what our staff is hearing from us and from CISA and other resources. So definitely there's could give examples, just off the top of my head at the elementary school, the zones of regulation. There's been a lot of emphasis put into that in the last 2-3 years of, that's a very much an evidence-based strategy for helping students to be cognizant of their feelings and, what zone am I in, green, yellow, blue, red, and if, that's a school-wide, system-wide thing that all elementary staff speaking that same language. That's just one example, I guess, to say. So it's definitely been a big part of everything that we've been
I think the other one that we brought up was kinship. Is another one that we're doing at the elementary school. And like you said, every time we can bring the big kids into the littles world. But I don't think we're gonna fix it, because we're not professionals in that area. It's just little things that we can do. Is kind of what I took away from her presentation, and having a list of resources.
It's awareness by our staff of what our kids are dealing with.
Okay. The next item of business is reminder of special school board meeting Wednesday, October 23rd at 4:30
Oh.
for the final approval of our budget.
I just want to make sure that's the time I have in my calendar.
Yeah, so just a reminder to everybody, next Wednesday.
Oh.
And the board had said we could do it that early if that still works for everyone.
It's
Still work?
23rd?
Next Wednesday, the 23rd, yeah. And typically 2-item agenda, levy and budget. And I mean, if we have something odd other item in there, if we're all here, we could do it. But that's the plan, is to do those two things. And so Eve and I are continuing to whittle things down and just fine tune from what we did from the preliminary one. And then, like I said, I'm going to an all-day workshop on Thursday with DPI and lots of folks to kind of really fine tune that revenue limit worksheet just to make sure that it is what it should be exactly. And between then and Wednesday, we'll put it all together. So
Sounds good. Next item of business then is our superintendent notes, Mr. Chris Peterson.
Okay, just briefly, a lot of the things that I would maybe talk about, activities and principals has talked about, just some professional development. You know, we've got the year going here in September, October, and all the professional networks. So it's nice to see, so the IT professionals network met at CISA on Friday, and the high school principals group, and the elementary principals group for the Lakeland Conference and for CISA. And I've had 2 CISA 11 superintendent meetings, at CISA, and I went to the WASDA Fall Conference 2 weeks ago. So just that professional networking now is up in full swing in the fall with school started again. And that's really nice. It's just a lot of growth comes from those kind of things. We've had some of our CISA helpers here a couple days yet this year already. You've heard about a lot of the screeners and data days that have been done. The staff have been digging into the strategic plan, and we're really starting to see some of that alignment between the district plan, district goals, and then we have school goals being developed by the principals, Mrs. Powers, and that goes down to the team goals at the PLC level and then individual goals. So we're starting to see some of that alignment. We talked about that at in-service on October 7th. Just kind of kept bringing it back to kind of repeating the big picture of what that is and how that whole system fits together. So. But yeah, just activities around school. We had Grandparents' Day recently in 4K. We got the 4K fall program coming up. Our athletic teams are rolling along, getting close to finishing up their seasons. Cross country's got conference meet tomorrow, and football and volleyball wrap up regular season this week. So it's been a busy month in the business office with DPI reports. Eve's been working very hard on many of those things, and again, compliments to Eve. It's her first year. She's going through first cycle of all these different things, and so she's been working very hard on that. But a lot of DPI reports here. So, and then interesting too, today we had Hunt Electric, which is the contractor that's coming in to do our fire alarm upgrade that you guys approved over the summer. They came in today, and they're going to actually start doing some of the on-site work here, and they'll be working over the next few months in the building, and they will be here during the school day, but we'll work, out of the way and get things done aside from the students. So we'll hope to wrap that up around holiday break. So that's all I got for highlights beyond what's been shared already.
Then we will move on to our contemplated closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.85, paragraph 1C. The board will discuss staffing and staff compensation. I will pull the board. Nettie?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Christy?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
We are in closed session. There we go. All right. We're back in open session. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the district bookkeeper consultant contract for the remainder of 2024. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve our bookkeeper contract. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. Next item of business is future agenda items. Anybody have anything they'd like to put on future agenda? All right. Next item of business is adjournment. I will entertain a motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second. It's been properly moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. We are adjourned.